Today is the 19th of February 2019, and I want to do something a little different this evening. I want to do a little trivia. I want to take a break from all of the negativity and all of the mayhem on our roads, all of the unanswered questions, just a little bit of trivia. What happened on this day in the past? In 1938, Adolf Hitler gave this much anticipated speech, which was delivered by the Third Reich, which was Germany's government at the time. And that speech was almost like Martin Luther's I Had a Dream speech for Adolf Hitler. It was the beginning of the start of the expansion of the Nazi regime, which later resulted in the occurrence of World War II. Did you know that? This day in 1938. This day in 1938, William Robinson Jr. was born. Whom? Smokey Robinson? You know, the guy who brought us Second That Emotion and Baby Baby Don't Cry and Tears of a Clown with The Miracles. He also brought us top hits like Cruising Together, you know this one, and Being With You and Just to See Her. Those hits. Well, on this day in 1940, Smokey Robinson, born William Robinson Jr., was born. On this day in 1942, the Executive Order 9066 was signed by President Roosevelt, a controversial World War II policy with lasting consequences for Japanese Americans. This document ordered the removal of resident enemy aliens from parts of the West Coast in America vaguely identified as military areas. 3 years later, the U.S. Marines land on Iwo Jima. 1945, the United States Marines landed on the tiny island of Iwo Jima, where they were met with heavy resistance from the Japanese. And on this day, in 1954, the Ford T-Bird came to being. 1954, the Ford T-Bird appears as a prototype, but did not start selling until later in 1954. And this is just a little bit, just the tip of the iceberg of trivia, things that happened on February 19th in the past. And we listed a few, but my favorite in all of what I have listed here is the T-Bird. And a little later on, I will explain why. Now, my preamble this evening is going to be very, very short because I have 2 guests in studio with me, and we have a decade's worth of information to present to you. A decade's worth, you say? You're thinking in the past. So we're going to jump into our time capsule and go back 10 years? You would be wrong. We're going to jump in that time capsule and perhaps dwell a little bit on what could be in the future. We're due for a break. When we come back, my guests. Stay tuned. Welcome back, St. Lucia. Thank you for staying tuned to what's happening now with Laura. I'm your guest, Laura Japia, and with me this evening are 2 guests. And I'm so excited about it because I heard someone say, one of my very favorite people in this world, articulate to me that he wanted to see a decade of research and innovation in St. Lucia. He was so excited about some of the inventions, some of the innovations coming out of St. Lucia, and was very troubled that we didn't have a repository for that information, or in trying to innovate, that there wasn't this place that you could go to and to say, I wonder what the amount of rainfall was in the year that we had the highest rainfall, or I wonder who won elections, who won their seat with the narrowest margin, and wanted to find at least 5 things, very disparate, but in one location, in one area, and that bothered him. And he couldn't find that. But before we go into that, let me just give you some words here. Let me just titillate you with some definitions here. The action or process of innovating. Innovation is a new idea, creative thought, new imagination in form of device or method. However, innovation is often also viewed as the application of better solutions that meet new requirements, unarticulated needs, or existing market needs. Let me give you a little story. Earlier in my preamble, I spoke to you about the T-Bird, the Ford T-Bird. It's called the Thunderbird, but the real name, the proper name for it is the Thunderbird, but most people refer to it as the T-Bird. And I said to you that that was my favorite part of the things that happened, that came about on February 19th in the past. And here's why. There were 2 gentlemen. One was named Louis Crusoe. He was a former GM executive who had retired but was lured out of retirement by Henry Ford II. And the other was George Walker, who was the chief stylist and Ford vice president. These 2 men met in France in October of 1951. And while they were walking in the Grand Palais in Paris, Crusoe pointed at a sports car and asked Walker, "Why can't we have something like that?" Meaning at Ford. Why can't we have something like that? Well, some versions of the story claim that Walker replied by telling Crusoe, "Oh, we're working on it." Although, if anything had existed at that time beyond casual dream car sketches by members of the design staff, records of it had never showed up. Never showed up then, and it still hasn't shown up. However, Walker promptly telephoned Ford's headquarters in Dearborn and told designer Frank Hershey, chief stylist for the Ford division, about the conversation with Crusoe. Hershey then took the idea and began working on a vehicle which later turned out to be the Thunderbird. To me, that is innovation. That is not creating or recreating the wheel, but it is taking something that existed already, building upon it, and creating something different. That idea, that conversation sparked a new idea, and it sparked a new generation, a new class of car called the personal luxury vehicle. That was the first. From 2 men having a conversation, one seeing something that the competitor had and asking, why couldn't we have something similar? And they took the idea, built upon it, and the T-Bird was born. That, to my mind, is innovation. With me, and I guess by now you know that my guest will be talking a little bit about innovation, or maybe a lot. With me this evening, I have Ms. Janelle Gabriel and Mr. Kurt Harris. Oh my gosh, I just had a senior moment. Mr. Kurt Harris, welcome.
Thank you.
Introduce yourself to St. Lucia. Just identify who you are and your background. We'll start with you, Janelle.
Okay. My name is Janelle Gabriel. I work with the Department of Sustainable Development as a Sustainable Development Officer responsible for biodiversity.
And Kurt?
Well, I'm Kurt Harris. I'm the Dean of the Division of Technical Education and Management Studies of the Arthur Lewis Community College. And I'm also the Project Manager for Engineering Research at the Vaughan A. Lewis Institute for Research and Innovation.
Now, the first shall be the last, and the last shall be the first. So, Kurt, we'll start with you. Tell us a little bit about Valerie.
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 Valerie is an institute, a research institute that was born out of an idea between the Jeff Smalls Grants Project and South Louis Community College. Particularly, the vice principal, Dr. Wilson Claire O'Keefe, in conversation with Mr. Giles Romulus, project coordinator at the Jeff. They were thinking that there was a need for a research institute to help to coordinate and to promote research on the island and to help draw researchers to the island. One of the biggest challenges that was identified was that a number of persons were finding difficulty aligning themselves with an institution where they could do research. So a lot of persons who want to come to St. Lucia to do research out of universities need to align themselves with a research institute on island. And those persons tend to be fully funded to do those sorts of research. And we had been missing out on that opportunity. So that was one of the primary reasons why it was felt that an institute needed to be created. From the South Louis perspective as well, with the number of persons at the college with capacity to do research, it was also felt that it would help aid South Louis. As a government institution, South Louis would struggle to get grant funding from a lot of donor agencies because they don't fund government organizations directly. And as a result, Valerie would be that conduit to allow persons who work at the college to be able to engage in research and help them get financing through that mechanism. So Valerie was born, it was formed, and Valerie is here today.
How long ago was the Valerie launched?
Valerie was launched in 2017. A nice launch. A number of persons were there, and we're ready to do the work. And the Decade of Research and Innovation is one of those activities, the activity that Valerie is utilizing as a launch pad to open up the research to the entire community as well as the organization.
Thanks for that lovely segue into the Decade of Research and Innovation. And I know, and you mentioned earlier Giles Romulus, and I know Giles has always constantly, if you speak with Giles and he has not mentioned or does not mention a decade dedicated to research and innovation, you haven't really spoken to him. We may have just said hi and walked away, gone away your merry way, but you didn't really have a conversation with him. And I know that's one of the things that he was so passionate about. In December, Jeff put together this knowledge fair. And a part of that was to get persons to sign. I think he wanted 10,000 signatures to be able to present to government to say, listen, we need to have a decade dedicated solely to research and innovation. And yesterday there was the launch for that decade for research and innovation. And I know Giles must be in bliss right now. And I really wish he was here to share his knowledge and the journey for that, but unfortunately he's not here today. But Janelle, tell us a little bit about that move and how accepting government was to dedicating that decade for research and innovation.
Okay, I really liked that first story you said about the Thunderbird, because there's this saying that everything that was created twice. The first time was in your mind. So for a lot of people to know that something can actually happen, they have to first have it in their mind and then maybe put it down on paper, do designs and so on. But they have to have that feeling that they can do it, that it can be done, and they have the freedom to dream about it and, and wonder and fantasize about it. So this Decade of Research and Innovation is that platform. It is that tool to encourage persons to be researchers and to be innovators in whatever field they are involved in. We really do not want research and innovation to be seen as something that is, for scientists or for people in universities only. Or no, this Decade of Research and Innovation is to make research and innovation household terms, common terms that people can identify with, that persons at all levels can see themselves being involved in and can see themselves benefiting from.
Right. Now, a decade, that's from 2019 to 2029. That's a long time. Yeah. And yet it can come in a blink of an eye. And if you do not have a plan, an action plan in place, if you do not have anything to guide you to say, okay, year one, this is what we want to achieve. Year two, this is what we want to achieve. Year three, this is what we want to achieve. The time can run by and then nothing has been achieved. Is there an action plan for that 10-year? And how can one access or be a part of that decade?
Oh, absolutely. There is a plan. One of the first action points on the plan was to talk to everybody and see what some of the research needs are. So coming out of the knowledge fair that took place in December in 2018, we started realizing that people are curious about certain things. People are asking these questions. Some of them are strictly scientific and they want answers, to what's the rainfall, or what was the political status at a certain time. But some of them are they're just curious about, okay, so where can I get the best tomatoes, or where can I, they are simply social questions. What's the traffic situation, how many accidents do we have, where are they, where are the trouble spots and things like that. So from this whole consultation with key persons who are very interested in this area, we started realizing what some of the research needs were and started looking at it in thematic areas. So our action plan is based on answering those questions, getting all of the data, all of the information, and then making it available to the public so that that information can be used and it can be absorbed into our policy making. It can inform our decision making. So we can say, okay, this is where we started. This was our baseline. This is what we found out. This is the action that we took, and here are our results. Are we doing okay? Do we need to tweak it? This whole idea of having evidence-based policy formulation is part of what we are trying to accomplish.
How critical will Valerie be in this whole process?
Well, Valerie will be leading the charge as it relates to the decade of research and innovation. One of the activities that Valerie will be undertaking early in the decade of research and innovation is becoming a clearinghouse for research. So we will be engaging in collecting and identifying where all of the research that has been done. The government in St. Lucia might be the largest repository of research in St. Lucia. Almost every single ministry department has a research unit. There's a lot of work that the civil servants have done already. The issue is that persons don't know that it has been done. They don't know who did it, and they don't know where to get it. So a lot of times you have persons saying, oh, they've never done this, this has not happened, but it actually has. So one of the things that we'll be doing, and that is one of the ways that the decade will go off, is by knowing what exists, who did it, for who they do it, and what are the recommendations out of it. So that persons now could see how much information is actually there. Valerie will be doing a coordination, so to speak, of the activity, in that ensuring and encouraging that there is participation of everybody. If you notice how we address, it's very specific the way that we address there tonight. Because like we have said, it's not about the white coats and the microscope. That's not all what research is about. Research is about everybody getting involved. From the primary school level, students could do research. Place a seed in water, place a seed in sand, place it in humus, place it in a soil, and they could identify which medium the seed grew in fastest. That's a simple research. And students can start from that level doing basic research, and then we can move up all the way to where you end up in a lab coat. Some of the greatest inventions were not created in labs. They were created by simple, ordinary men who had curiosity and wanted to find out what was happening. Why is this happening? And that's what we want to encourage. We want to encourage that not only do they understand what research is, but they practice research. That persons recognize that they are being innovative. So when you talk about our brown comfort and our white comfort, were those things innovative?
Yes. When you say I'm just gonna have a little humor moment. You said the brown comfort and the white comfort.
I was specific. I was utilizing the PC.
Yes. Go ahead.
So this is what Valerie will really be doing. It's not about Valerie actually undertaking the research. No. It's about encouraging and getting everybody involved.
So Valerie will be the repository of all of the information.
That is correct.
Not necessarily conducting
That is
the
correct.
information. Now, how daunting is that? Because earlier you spoke about all of there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of research having been done. How daunting a process is it going to be collating all of that information and bringing it under the one umbrella of Valerie?
It's huge. It is a very ambitious goal. We're going to be breaking a few eggs. But the one thing that we want to remind people is that Valerie will still not be the owner of the research. The research will still be the ownership of. What we will be collecting in that database is a place where persons can search and find, and we could direct persons to where they could go get that research. One of the things that we want to try to encourage throughout this decade of research and innovation is that persons can see the financial benefits for the work that they have done as well. But first you need to know what's there and who has done it. So that's where we're starting off from that point. And as the decade rolls on, you will see that the even through the action plan, it's not fixed. It's not rigid. It's demand driven. It's what persons want to do. It's not about a specific sector. It's not about a specific activity. It's a demand-driven approach. So persons who are interested or want to do research, all research is welcome. All innovations are welcome. And what you will see happening throughout the decade of research and innovation is that we are planning to highlight when persons do work. Because a lot of times persons are doing work and nobody knows about it. They don't get that recognition that they deserve for the excellent work that they do.
Has Valerie begun collating information, research that exists already? Because I'm thinking, just sitting here in these 5 minutes, I'm thinking, oh my God, like I love research, and I to get information and to analyze the information. I love raw data, and to get that information and say, okay, and then present and say, this is, and when somebody asks how, and then you say, but look, this is what we know. And to be able to manipulate that information and show, oh my gosh, there's a trend right here, and to create opportunities, or to see opportunities that could be seized by others, if not by yourself. But then that's constant. People are constantly doing research and constantly be, so as you're collating, as you're filing things together, more is coming and more and more. How do you intend to manpower that?
Well, like you're saying, it is a daunting task. Luckily, we have 3,650 days to do it. And the good news is that some of it has already started. So St. Lucia has the Open Data Portal, which accepts information, data, raw data that can be manipulated. We also have the National Environmental Information System, NEIS.gov.lc, which persons can get information on. So these different platforms will be used to start to collect the information. Another thing that we are going to be doing as part of this decade is to ensure that we have the right policies in place, so that information sharing and intellectual property rights are not overlooked, and those things are included when we are collecting people's research ideas and their research proposals, and of course the outputs from their studies. So there are some things that are already in place and some things that are in train that will support all of this work that we have to collect and put together and ensure that people get credit for and are acknowledged for, and so on.
When we talk about credit, and when we talk about, now I have a little bit of an accounting background, so when I hear credit, I see dollar signs. I'm going to be honest. I mean, I see dollar signs. I mean, you think about credit in your regular everyday lives, and you think of your cell phone, and you think of putting credit on my phone, and I know that there's a dollar sign there again. Yeah. And every time you talk about credit, there's a debit, there's a this, there's a dollar signs. So when we talk about credit and we talk about acknowledgement, because I could totally see somebody doing some research and say, no, I'm not giving you my research. I'm not going to tell you because, then somebody else uses that, and then they get to get wealthy off of my research. And then, so what we're talking about?
Well, I think that's why Janelle spoke about intellectual property rights. That is one of the mechanisms. But we also need persons to recognize that information and research was never meant not to be shared. If that was the case, they would never have created books. The whole reason why persons find out things and do things is really and truly to share it. And as much as we are looking at intellectual property rights, and so that persons could get the financial reward, there's also the credit for knowing that you have been able to change.
Darling, credit does not buy tomatoes and put it on the table.
No,
So no, I'm serious. And then you talk about the books, and I'm saying yeah, but again, the authors of the books, they get their dollars ching ching when the book sells. So if I want your information, I purchase your book, whether it's a hard copy or whether it's a soft copy. I purchase the books, and so ching ching in my pocket.
That is
so
correct.
people
But-
want to know those kinds of things.
But you'll also recognize that most authors would tell you their second book was not the one that made it. So it is not a guarantee that because you do one research that you'll necessarily become a millionaire overnight. The idea is that as persons get to know you as a quality researcher, it changes your dynamics. So that's where the intellectual property rights comes in. That's where the sharing of the information of what it is that you're actually doing comes in, because it's a process. It is not something, and we don't want to kid anybody or fool anybody that, oh, you did a research today and tomorrow you're going to get $10,000. It doesn't work that way. It's a process.
So-
you need to share.
We understand it's a process, and you talked a little bit about IP rights, intellectual property rights. What is in place? Because I specifically went down that route because I wanted you to articulate so that our viewers at home, especially the young boys and girls who are thinking, okay, I can write a book, I can write a manual on something, and I'm going to get rich off of it. No, it doesn't happen that way. There's no shortcuts, there's no easy route. It's a long, drawn-out process. But I like the fact that you talked about intellectual property rights. What is in place so that, because it's not something that's very, very easy or cheap to come by. What are we looking at in place for persons who are interested in writing a manual? Maybe they've already conceptualized something, they've already done the research, but at the end of the day, they would like more than just words or an acknowledgement. They'd like to see something out of it. Let's face it, we're living in a very me-centric environment, and people want to get paid for what they do.
Yeah. One of the things that we do have, I know Kurt is probably trying to be, pragmatic about people getting rich off of their research, but one of the things we are trying to include in there is for persons to be able to benefit from their research in terms of dollars, so that if there's a particular field that they have done a study on and it is in the collection, when we get to that stage in the decade, persons will be able to access it, and perhaps it would be coded in such a way so you can only download one copy on one device, so that you wouldn't be able to share it, and have all of these safeguards in place, but then so people can actually earn money from the work that they've done with research. So that is in the long-term plan.
Wonderful, because in my mind I'm thinking something like Echo, like how
Exactly.
we made music and everybody just played the
Exactly.
music and just pirated the music,
Right.
and then nobody benefited at all except the people who threw the
Maybe the
dances and
party.
whatever. And now you have Echo, where
Yes.
you stand as a songwriter, as a musician, as a creator of music to benefit every time somebody plays your music, every time somebody listens, or to actually purchase your music and that kind of thing. So that's heartening to know.
Right, and for researchers, I think for most researchers, lecturers and professors and so on, knowing that you get acknowledgement for your work, being called, named, highlighted, is also something that's very valuable to them, because as a professor in your field, if you're published, then your value goes up. As Kid is saying, it changes your dynamics and it changes your appeal to people. So credit in that way is a lot more valuable to persons in the field of research and so on. But we're looking at both sorts of credit.
Beautiful, beautiful. What can we expect? What can we expect during this decade of research and innovation? I mean, so we have a decade set aside for research and innovation, but
I think we should not even put our minds in a box. We should just be thinking of all the fantastic things that are possible. Think about smart schools. Think about schools where in the classroom parents can see the syllabus online and they can help children with their homework in the online groups and sessions and know what's on the curricula and what's the homework. Think about in the kitchen, where people have access to, new innovations, new ways of peeling your coconut, peeling your green figs so your fingers don't turn black. Think about innovation and research on all levels and all levels of our society. I don't, I'm excited. I don't even want anybody to put it in a particular box. Think about our culture being digitized so that if we do not have to suffer another folk research center disaster. All of those sorts of things are things that we hope at the end of these 10 years will be documented, will be available to us. Young people will be inspired because they see that this thing can be created and it can happen, and then that will, catalyze them to create their own as well.
Okay. So I've just thought about a way that I can peel those green figs, right? And without the gummy. Ugh.
Why does that even happen? We do the
Yeah,
research
yeah.
first.
Why does that happen? What's in the green figs that
up?
does it, and the ripe bananas doesn't have? And why do we say green figs and not green bananas? And why do we say ripe bananas and not ripe figs? Like, why? All of those things.
Why you say a hand of bananas and a pat fig? I
don't know. I really don't know. But maybe in this decade we'll have the answers to all of that. But now I've figured it out.
Okay.
What do I do? Where do I go?
Good. Well, the National Competitiveness Council is actually leading the way as it relates to the IP rights.
And innovation.
One of the things that, when it comes to IP rights, it's a very expensive process to actually register intellectual property. And it's also important to know whether or not somebody else has already registered it. So it is a long process. So what is actually happening right now as we speak is that work is being done to find out what is the best way to be able to allow for the registration of intellectual property here on island, and to make it cheaper and more affordable for persons to be able to do that. You can already here in St. Lucia, you can patent ideas through, you can utilize the US patent systems. It is a little bit difficult, and these are some of the things that we are trying to put in place, all of the systems, so that persons can find out how is it that you go about doing all of those processes and how much it will cost you. Because sometimes persons need to recognize that you're not the first person who came up with that idea, so you cannot really patent it, but it doesn't mean that you can't make money on it locally. So these are the sorts of things that we want, and that's what Valerie is seeking to become that one-stop shop where persons can get all of that information as it relates to those sorts of activities. So the National Competitiveness Council is working on that end. They are doing an ecosystem mapping, and these are some of
Ecosystem mapping.
Yeah, mapping.
Okay, so we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Well, we should talk about it.
Yeah.
And what will occur is that persons will be able to get all of that information, and then throughout the decade you will start to see more persons being able to take those routes of registering their intellectual property, having patents and things of that sort. So what you would find happening is that we'll have a more enlightened society. We'll have a society that will be making decisions based on knowledge and information. So we're hoping, and what we want to achieve in the decade is that we move from the UD culture to the culture where it is fact and evidence based, and not that I heard it and they say and that sort of thing.
Okay, we're due for a break, but when we come back, we'll speak more about with my guests about more about the decade of innovation, and I'm very interested in that mapping thing, right? So stay tuned. We'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back, Solution. Thank you for staying tuned to what's happening now with Laura. With me in studio are my guests, Ms. Janelle Gabriel from Sustainable Development, and we also have with us Mr. Kurt Harris from, and I'm just going to say Valerie. Yep, wonderful. Before we went on break, you mentioned something about ecosystem mapping. Tell us a little bit about that. I mean,
well, the National Competitiveness Council, one of the partners in the Decade of Research and Innovation, is actually doing work to find out where are the gaps in terms of our ability to be innovative and to innovate. So they will be mapping out all of what is happening in St. Lucia and where those challenges lie, and then we'll be making recommendations and policy, both from the policy side and implementation side, on how to fill in those gaps. So that mapping will help give us some guidance and would then inform the Decade of Research of Innovation as to what are the things that we can and should be doing.
Wonderful. So maybe the next time we have a forum like this, we can bring in these guys and they can expound a little bit more on the eco, because I think that's fascinating. I think it's important to know. All right.
Yes.
Now, as it relates to Valerie, on your end, what are some of the projects? Are there any projects that you are engaged in right now that could lend impetus to the Decade of Research and Innovation?
Definitely. Well, currently we are engaged in researching PV performance. PV stands for photovoltaic, or for most persons would know it as solar energy, utilizing solar panels to generate energy.
Except it's using the light. That's where the photo
sun,
comes in.
that's
Yeah,
correct.
the sunlight.
That's
as
correct.
opposed to heat from the sun, but you're looking at the light.
Well, nowadays you have what they call full spectrum panels that actually utilize both the heat and the light.
But the one you're
So
looking at is specific to
primarily the light is the principal generator of the energy. The manufacturer specifications for our region state that we need to have our panels inclined at 14 degrees and oriented towards the south for peak performance. What we are researching is that how does changing the orientation impact energy generation? Why? Everybody's roof is not pitched at 14 degrees, nor is it oriented to the south. So if persons want to get involved and want to install that, is it beneficial to if you have no south-facing roof? Do I bother to invest in a PV system when my payback is going to be extended over a longer period of time because the roof that I have, it's just not efficient to install that roof? So what we are engaging in is to find out whether or not and how much it actually impacts the production of energy for roofs installed at different orientations. And that particular project is actually in collaboration with Arthur Lewis Community College, Division of Technical Education and Management Studies. We are also engaged in with a German researcher, again together with Arthur Lewis Community College and the Technical Division, to look at the performance of vertical windmills. This particular German,
vertical windmills as opposed to horizontal.
That is correct.
Explain that for our viewers.
Well, most windmills spin this way. So the blades are across in a horizontal manner, and they would spin with a large blade. The vertical windmill will spin like this, as opposed to spin like this. So what it does is that it takes up less space. It's not as in your face as a horizontal oriented windmill. And if you look at it from an energy perspective, it should be more efficient because you have less energy changes because you don't change from horizontal to vertical to horizontal. And every energy change that you have in a system, you will have energy loss. So it should reduce your losses. And we are going to be testing how efficient that particular windmill is. So that's one of the researches that Valerie is engaged in as well. And we're also working with a St. Lucian researcher who is doing his PhD in epidemiology, and he's doing some research into cancer. and to the impacts of cancer on the Saint Lucian Society. So he studied in Martinique, France, and is now in Guadeloupe. And he will be doing some research with us here in that regard.
It's interesting that you mention the cancer and that kind of thing. And I was just watching a replay of one of the tech talks that took place last year in December, where this doctor was saying, every time we eat our veggies that look so beautiful and so tasty on our plates, and we think, oh, I'm eating healthy, I'm doing something good, we're actually consuming 5 milligrams of pesticides. Yeah. And he went on to say, well, don't worry that it's not going to kill you immediately. And I was like, oh my God, so my death is going to be more protracted. It's going to be over a longer period of time. It's going to be, and anybody who knows me knows I have this thing about mortality. So it's going to kill me, and it's not going to kill me now. And I don't know how it's going to kill me, because it could kill me, could manifest in some sort of cancer. But even then, there's such a wide spectrum of cancer. Which cancer is going to get me? I don't know. And then I'm almost tempted to be, what's the word? What's the disease that you have when you don't eat?
Anorexic.
Extreme.
And I want to eat,
Yeah.
and I love to eat. I love my good food, the food that I like. And then I'm going to be like, oh, but then every time I eat, I'm like, oh my gosh, I just consumed. And I'm on this kick right now to eat healthier, so I'm eating more fruits and vegetables. So every time I eat, I'm like, oh my God, I've just ingested 5 milligrams of pesticide.
So here's where innovation comes in. And if you're a farmer, here's where innovation comes in for you, because one of the things we are very, very interested in is alternative to pesticides. What are some of the local natural pesticides that we can use instead of dumping all this paraquat and touchdown and all of these things on top of the food that we are going to eat? What are some of the things that we can find naturally? Neem apparently is quite effective as a naturally occurring pesticide, and there are some soil organisms that can also do that kind of soil treatment and so on. So again, innovation and research are all key to all of us. If you're a farmer, maybe you've done some of this research and you can see, no, I don't use paraquat anymore because all I have to do is mix some garlic and spray it on my plant or something. We are very interested in your research, your results, and what some of the alternatives that you can provide us with, because this cancer thing is quite serious.
Very serious. What are some of the areas that persons can look to in this decade of research and innovation?
Well, you just touched on one, which was health. So as far as cancer, what kinds of cancers do we have? Are there any geographical correlations to where some cancers might be found? What types of cancers there are?
I'm glad you touched on the geographical, because I was having a conversation with some ladies the other day, and we were pinpointing. There was one particular lady in our group, and it seemed almost every week she's going to a funeral of a woman who passed on from breast cancer. And we said, oh my gosh, the most. And that spurred on a conversation. And then we realized that all of these women actually came from a specific geographic area. And then we went on to think, is there any research that could link those incidents of breast cancer with that geographical area, or things that are happening, that has happened in the last 10 years that didn't happen, or that wasn't occurring in the previous decades, in this last decade, where so many women are stricken with breast cancer? And it was curious.
Yes.
And the answer is, we don't know.
We don't know. We need to do the research.
Mm-hmm.
Are we seeing more cases because more people are getting diagnosed? Are we seeing more cases because people are doing things differently? Like you're saying, are we eating different? Are we walking around with our cell phones all the time? What are the correlations?
Younger and younger numbers of women are getting so. Why is that?
What is causing it? And you know, cancers are complex, so it can be family, it can be environment, it can be all sorts of things. But if we can get the information and develop this registry, then we can be able to make some informed decisions, and also to be able to prescribe the right care for persons, preventative treatment, and so on, depending on what the area and what we find out. So definitely cancer is one of the areas that we are interested in doing research on, as well as diabetes and hypertension. And we're also under the health sector looking at the impact of the fumes from the decomposing sargassum seaweed, which is plaguing the East Coast.
I always see, if I were living in Poile, I would have
It's
had
rough.
some sort of cancer or something in my throat or my
Your
nose.
nose. It's
And,
rough.
and I try not to articulate that, but it gets more
Yes.
glaring because every time I go on a road trip with my mom,
Yeah.
she says the same thing and she doesn't say it nicely.
It's the East Coast Sulphur Springs.
So, and it's funny you should say that because just Sunday we went on a road trip and my nephew said he was sleeping and he woke up and said, "Oh, we're at the Sulphur Springs."
Right.
And everybody just burst out laughing because we were on the East Coast, but he was
Right.
sleeping, so he was a little disoriented and he wasn't sure where he was. So he just woke up because the stench woke him up, and he said, "Oh, we're at the Sulphur Springs,"
Right.
not realizing that we were actually driving along the East Coast.
Right,
So
and we've seen some innovations with the use of the sargassum, and farmers are using it for but we want to see what is the impact on the air quality and so on. And also talking about, since we're on the topic of health and so on, we know that our biodiversity, our plants, our animals, the places where they are found have immense potential to be used as pharmaceuticals. So what plants do we have that we can use for treating cancer, for treating all of these chronic illnesses that are plaguing our society? We really want to start looking into the noni and the all of these things that are local to us as a solution.
speaking of which, there's a plant called the Panadol.
Right.
And I'm curious, did the name Panadol come after there was the Panadol, the pharmaceutical, or before? And if it were after, it was named, so dubbed after, what was it called before? You know what I mean? Like, this is stuff that we just don't know. So it would be interesting to find if we have the original Panadol, and if we don't have the original Panadol, what was that plant called before Panadol?
I actually think it was the actual Panadol, because most of these drugs come from some natural, 90% of all of the new drugs that have been made in the last 10 years have come from natural plants or some marine plant or something of the sort. So I, as far as I'm aware, it is the actual Panadol, and it was the cure when we had all of this chikungunya and dengue and nothing else was working. So we know that they are effective. We know we have plants that have potential and essential oils and all of these things, and there's a lot of scope for what we can do with this. So again, we are encouraging people. Your granny knows something, she takes a couple of leaves and she mixes it and she gives you this thing, and all of a sudden your asthma is gone. We want to know about that.
I know one doctor is going to be very happy for this decade of research and innovation. It's
St.
Dr.
Rose.
Gilbert of St. Rose, because for years this lady has been
Yeah.
expounding, extolling the virtues of our local plants and making it work. And you don't very often get medical doctors who are trained in pharmaceutical and chemicals and to treat
There you go.
ailments coming out and telling you, okay, use the natural stuff,
Yes.
and in what quantities and in what proportions to what that you're using it, and so that you don't kill yourself in the process. Because I remember a few years ago, my mom, I swear, had an overdose on neem. It was just, she had this reaction. She had this allergic reaction. Everybody was like, it was so good, and then you have to use it, and she just went crazy on this thing. And then
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
it was scary.
Moderation,
It
yes.
was really, really scary.
the
And it
research.
got to the point, and by now you should realize there's a current theme. I always go to the extreme. So then I just like, whoa, not me.
Yeah.
Whoa, Panadol, leave it there.
Yeah.
Go on a buffet, leave it there, and
Yeah.
because you just don't know.
Right.
But with the decade for research and innovation, all of those things could be put into perspective.
Absolutely.
Now, all of this, I know for a fact that research can be very, very costly. And you may be an excellent researcher, and you may have the wherewithal to find, or you might be curious about certain things and you know that the answer is there, but how do you go about doing it? Funding the research. How do people fund the research that would populate Valerie,
Right.
or, collate all of that information that we would love to have during this decade?
That is one of the greatest challenges that we're going to have for the decade of research and innovation. And that is one of the reasons why Valerie was set up as well. Because individuals looking to do research will struggle to attract resources. As a coordinating mechanism, Valerie would now go out and seek and source where those funding opportunities are. We will not be able to guarantee that everybody and every single research idea that somebody has that will be funded, or we would be able to point them in the direction where they can get funding, but we will be facilitating as much as possible persons to find for them where that funding can be. We're also expecting, and it looks very positive, that there will be support from the government of St. Lucia. It's very much involved and very taking the lead, actually. You have organizations such as the Jeff interested in research, especially as it relates to the protection of the environment. So research in any area that looks at the environment. The Jeff is one of the points that you could get funding from. And there are organizations out there. There are collaborations that can be had with universities and colleges and other funds around the world that we can look at. So Valerie would be that coordinating mechanism to identify and to pair partners together, the right
So if I
partners
wanted to
together.
know not just what research exists on something, but I want to, I know that there is no research on that particular, in that particular area, but I need to know where I can get funding for that. I can also go to Valerie, and Valerie will be able to point me in the right direction, tell me, okay, this organization is now tendering for proposals for research, or there's a call for proposals or whatever. You could go there, and but more importantly though, would there, because researching is one thing, writing a proposal for funding is another thing. Would there be a component or a cadre of persons who are versed in proposal writing, especially Jeff proposal writing, because this is a long protracted one, very specific, to be able to guide and to maybe write, or to be able to assist with persons who are interested in getting funding?
Definitely. We understand that there are gaps, and not everybody would be able to write a proposal. And we must also make personal, especially when you look at competitive proposals, that you could have an airtight proposal written and still not get funded, because it is a competitive process. So there will be support. The mechanisms will be put in place to support persons. Not everybody will get funded as much as we would like to fund everybody, but we always advise to don't give up hope, because there's always next year, and you never know. Sometimes you start smaller, you do your own little something, and you build on it, and that helps the proposal the next time around. So it is a process. There's no guarantee. We don't have I will not kid anybody, we don't have any millions in the bank sitting there waiting for anybody, but we will be working together with all of the partners that we have, both governmental and non-governmental actors, to get the resources to assist persons as much as we can.
One of the things I like that you said is that you're able to, or the intention is to be able to link persons together. So you may have a person who is interested in some water-based something, but in doing their research, they found out something else, and they could go to you guys, and then you could link them with, okay, well, this other person is doing that research in that area. Maybe you can collaborate with them, and now you have a whole other research parameter set up right there, because you're doing something, that other person is doing something, and in your own research, it's crossing with that other person's.
And we have found that, for example, the gentleman out of Guadeloupe, the St. Lucian, who's doing his PhD in epidemiology, the Ministry of Health has been working on a cancer database. CAFA is also doing some work as it relates to cancer, and he wants to come to do some work relating to cancer. And they're now, we now knowing that are looking to create these synergies, because they may not be communicating with each other, they may be communicating with each other, but now that we could inform everybody that, hey, you three guys are working on the same thing. One may miss something or have information that the other needs, and then we get more better research that is able to guide, because the resources that, let us say, the Ministry of Health had, they may have wanted to go 2 steps further, and the 2 steps that they wanted to go is where the gentleman out of Guadeloupe wants to go, but he needed those steps that they've already done.
Yes.
So there we can get
So
closer
his
and
own
closer.
research is not protracted,
Right.
doing
Ex-
something that has already been done.
And then
He can
the-
just build on
And
it.
Build
And
on it.
Exactly.
And
And
value.
that is what we are looking to do, because in a resource scarce environment, we should not be wasting the resources replicating and duplicating what has already been done. We should be building upon it so that we can get to the finishing line and get the data and the information that would really inform decision making. Because we want to move away, like we said, from the Yodi culture, from persons saying that they feel, to persons saying that this is what the data says. And we do.
Okay. Now, my intention was to go, we're due for break, but my intention was to go to break. But I think we have calls coming in already. Okay, so the call dropped, but we'll go for a quick break, and when we come back, this is the time where the viewers now can interact with you and to ask you questions specific. So the number to call is 451-9788, 284-6536. Of course, is our WhatsApp platform, and you can also send us your emails at laurajepe@gmail.com. So we're going for break, and when we come back, I have these questions ready, and the lines will be opened, and you can ask any questions of my guests. See you on the other side of the break. Come back, and thank you for staying tuned to what's happening now with Laura. And if you see I'm smiling, it's because there's an interesting conversation going sidebar, and I want to be a part of it, and we'll have to be back on. The number to call is 451-9788, and the WhatsApp platform is 284-6536. You can also send us your email messages at laurajepe@gmail.com. Now, other areas that are vital to this whole decade
Right.
of research and innovation.
Okay, so the whole idea of having this decade of research and innovation is also for us to impact the productivity of our business sector and to impact economic development. So we have a business sector, and under that we will be looking at things that will allow producers to operate a little bit more efficiently, for our agri-producers, we want to develop a database of who's producing what, so that we know who has what fruits or vegetables available, and we can match them up quickly with persons who want to purchase them. We also have a skills bank where, well, we plan to have a skills bank where persons with unique skills or any skills who may not be employed full-time can be attached to businesses that want that temporary sort of service. So if it is a restaurant that needs a part-time service or a one-time job, they can reach out to us, we can send somebody to them, and then those skills will be put to use, the person would get paid, and the company doesn't have to invest in hiring a person for a full month or a full-time employee when they just want that particular service. So people are employed and the business gets what it wants, and it's a win-win. And also providing assistance with marketing of products. Some people have put in a lot of work and energy into developing their products, whether it's charcoal or cassava or coconuts or whatever it may be, and they just need a little assistance with marketing. So one of the things we hope to bring from gathering this research on what are the needs and what are the areas and so on is to be able to provide that service to the business sector.
Wonderful, because a lot of the times you find people want to do things, but they're good at one area. They're just good at that, and don't ask them to do anything else. They really don't know. They wouldn't even begin to know how or where to start. So it's nice. It's a good thing to have those auxiliary services where they can tap into that. Because a lot of good ideas stop at that stage, the good idea stage, because to bring it to the market, you don't know how. To make the money, you don't know how. And I recall this story about this guy who went to the west, like the Los Angeles, California area, when the gold rush, to dig for gold, and he says, you know, he's tired of all that hard back-breaking work. He's just going to find an area, and he's going to dig for gold, and he's going to get the gold. He's going to strike it rich, and he doesn't have to work again. So he doesn't mind putting in hard work for a few months because he knows it's going to pay off. So he sold everything he had. He bought all of his equipment, went off and to start digging, and he dug and he dug and he dug and he dug. Every day he woke up early and he dug, and he left the fields late at night, and he went home, and he was dog tired, and he woke up every morning very early, and he went and he says, my God, what a fool I've been. You know, I did all of this. I left everything that I knew and that I loved, and I sold everything that I had, and I came to this, and it's 10 times as hard. I give up. So there's this other guy who came, and he says, you're selling your stuff? He says, yes, I'm moving back. Oh my God, I can't take it. And he just gave away his equipment and everything for cheaply and whatever. And the other guy who bought his stuff, he went and he said to the other people in the area, and he says, you know this area very well. He says, so what areas do you think I could possibly get gold? And they gave him 2 areas, and one didn't pan out, but the other one was just a few feet away from where the other guy had been digging, and within a matter of days he struck it rich. Gold, 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 gold. And it just underscores the difference in approach of people. This guy, they both wanted to work hard. They knew if they worked hard they would strike it rich, and they would get the gold. But one didn't do the research. He didn't do the research needed before. Had he done the research, he would have realized that he was in the right area.
Focused,
he just needed to dig a little bit more. Had he done the research, had he known where to go to find out what he needed to find out, is he digging in the right area, then he would have known, okay, he's onto a good thing. The other guy maybe was not the best digger. He never even dug himself. He just invested. He got in, he did the research, he found out who knew the area, tell me where, and he got other guys. He hired other guys to dig for him. They dug. They got a share, he got a share, and everybody was happy, except the guy who sold everything. So research. We have our very first call online. Thank you for calling. You're on the air. Hello. Good evening. Okay, we lost that call. Yeah, so the importance of research and collaborating is the point of that story that I just gave. Very important to collaborate and to know.
Perfect. I think we when we were discussing the financing, the importance of partnerships came out, and I think we're going to be innovative of how we get this done.
We have another call on 9. Thank you for calling. You're on the air.
Laura?
Yes?
I think we're having some phone problems here.
We maybe, but you got the line.
So Laura, you don't buy the story.
Sorry?
You don't buy the story of build the best mouse trap, etc., etc. Ah, I see your guest caught me before you did.
Yes, she did.
Build the best mouse trap, and the world will be a path to your door. So you don't buy that then? Having heard your story about the gold.
Yes.
And what a story, Laura! From that's 1700s ago. The world has changed a lot.
Sometimes you have to go old school to get to new school, you know.
But I want to say this more seriously, though. While it is true that people may be doing useful things, and they lack the marketing skills, or they don't even think of marketing, etc. It's also true of, I have to say, of young people like this that we're hearing about for the first time.
Hello?
Hearing about what
No?
for the first time?
Are you hearing me, Laura?
I'm hearing you. I'm hearing you now, but I missed what you said a while ago.
I'm saying to you, while it is true that the quiet entrepreneurs need to get out there and to know who can help them market and PR and so on, but they don't, so do the PR people or the people in a position to help them need to take their own lesson as well.
Absolutely.
Because I'm just hearing about these guys for the first time.
Yes.
There
Okay.
just is that thing in St. Lucia.
Yes,
Interesting point, no?
Very, very interesting, very interesting. And I think, and earlier today, I was speaking with Janelle, and I was telling her one of the problems that I have with PSAs or anything in particular is that we want to bring out a message. We say it once, and we expect it to stay and permeate and to be in our evoked sets forever and ever. Amen. But it doesn't work that way.
It's a St. Lucia.
Yeah, but it doesn't work
It's
that
a
way.
St. Lucia thing, Laura.
It is a St. Lucian thing.
And it's a cost thing too, because
I talked to some goody people a couple of years ago, and they were bragging about the fact they were doing so much charity work and so on and so on, and didn't have to publicize themselves because so I started talking about the Red Cross and all the famous bodies that do humanitarian work, and how they even have star front people who are stars. I mean, wives of presidents and so on and so on. There's a reason for that. But we seem to have a reluctance, which is a hypocrisy, by the way. We seem to have a reluctance to get out there and sell ourselves, pretending to be humble and all that kind of stuff, when we're not really.
I know, and then we complain that we don't get the recognition, and we don't get the this, and we don't, and everybody else, and the word that comes to mind, oh, that person is an opportunist, and they make opportunists seem so dirty and nasty and a rat, you know, poor opportunist.
Naipaul says, no, Laura. Naipaul says the most the worst word that West Indians have to Trinidadians is to call somebody who has skills or somebody who's doing something or trying to uplift themselves conceited.
Yes.
And
arrogant.
Caribbean people are so wary of being called conceited.
Yes.
So they get on the. But you know, we have all the aphorisms. I think the word is like the loudest squeak gets the oil. We have all those things. We teach them in schools, but we don't practice them.
It's true.
But I would love to see people like these young people there promote themselves more, so that these people in the cobwebs would see them, contact them. It's so much easier to contact them. Not, but can I come talk to you or something like that. So they should first of all take their own advice.
Great.
We will.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And he's so right, because I remember one time in church, I have this little group of girls that I mentor every Saturday, and so there's a junior choir. So we always want to give back. So we raise funds to do things for themselves, but they always give back. So if they raise $5, $1 of it they're going to give back. So one of the things that we did was we put together a first aid kit for church, because we had all of these senior citizens every Sunday. At least one person and there's no smelling salts, there's no nothing. So we said, okay, let's put this first aid kit together, and we put this first aid kit together, and we wanted to present it to the church. And the person, no, he says, you don't have to always make you give to charity. It's not just charity. If you didn't, we didn't, and nobody knows up to this day that there is a first aid kit in the church. And every Sunday somebody says there is not even a first aid kit, and I sit back and I chuckle, because there is a first aid kit, but nobody knows. But had we been able to, or given the permission to present it to the congregation, then everybody would know that there's a first aid kit, and that when somebody falls ill, to go for that first aid kit. And it's these little things, you know, we always want to be so, don't
false modesty.
Yeah, false modesty. Don't put up your hand and say, I could do this. Let your works be recognized.
Speak for itself.
And nobody recognizing your work, because they're
same.
busy recognizing their own work. So you're now getting stuck in the back, and it's something that is very inherent of St. Lucians.
Well, that is why I think we said earlier that one of the things that we definitely want to do, and we will be doing at periods throughout the decade of research and innovation, is recognizing the work of researchers and innovators. PR is something that we believe it's only for our business. So if you're a business and you're making money, so you see Hobby always has the ads, Flow, TGCell, you have your ads. Everybody else is supposed to cower and hide. We are very bashful people where we believe that anybody who has any bit of flamboyance or anybody who advertises themselves is somebody who has a problem or looks for attention or something like that. So if you don't want to be labeled as an attention seeker or something of that sort, you stay quiet and you don't do anything. But it is precisely for those reasons that we have the decade of research and innovation. And as Janelle was saying earlier, it is not limited to any one area. So actually, if you look at and it will be available for persons to peruse, that there are social issues. That's an excellent area to actually research.
Yes.
Why are we bashful? Is it something that is inculcated in us because of
You know,
religion?
I really wish I had the time.
That is the first thing I was thinking.
I
actually.
really wish I had the time, because that is something I think I'd like to sink my teeth into. Why? Why do we have these hang-ups? You know, why do we always feel that, you know, sometimes you walk into a room and I am guilty of it. I'll be the first person to say I'm guilty of it, because but I think I treasure my privacy a lot. So now I'm on television. I've been on television for a few years now. When I go out, people always, "Are you the lady?" And then the people around me actually can, I so blank it off, I don't even see it anymore. And the people around me, I just had this experience last week, around me will notice, and they will answer the question that has not been
she's the lady.
asked. So while I'm trying not to make the eye contact, so you don't ask me, even when I make eye contact, they don't ask. It's like a burning thing, and then you can, when you pass by, you can hear them. I think that's her. I think that's her. You know, and you just want. I just want to run away. Some people, it's natural for them, for the limelight and everything. But for some of us, we tend to be a little bit more reserved and to want to shy a little bit away from it. But the question is why. And for me, I think I have the answer. I know the answer for me, but the answer, no, but seriously, I know the answer for me, because we were always taught, especially as a girl child, that you should be seen and not be heard.
Yes.
So even though you know you know that ain't making no sense, because
you've been told.
Yes, indoctrinated with that time and time again. And I was a loud child. I still am, but I was a loud child. So you always be, girls are supposed to be heard and not be supposed to be seen and not being heard.
Exactly.
And you know, and use your inside voice. And so after a while, it takes a toll. You know what I mean?
One of the things that we got out of our consultations was that that there is that in our culture, our behavior, our perception of data and research is daunting because of how we were raised. Things like be seen and not heard, things like sit down and shut up, cover your work when you're doing it, you know, don't share your data and information. It's cultural, it's part of our society, and it's good research material.
We have a call? I think I lost my hearing for a little bit. Okay. I think we had a call and we lost that call, so that was my fault. I'm so sorry. Please try again. But it's true.
Yes,
it's true. And in the classroom, you're not allowed to be creative. We have another call online. Thank you for calling. You're on the air.
Sorry, I hope you don't mind me calling you a second time.
No.
But what the gentleman just said there is so much on the ball that we actually are taught to be insecure. If you think about it, we are taught shut up. You know, don't talk. You know, you keep quiet. And he's so right when he says if you push yourself and you want to be upfront, then you're called all kinds of derogatory names and put down. And even happens in the home.
But that's why it begins. That's why it begins. It begins in the home. So when it happens in the schools and when it happens outside in public, you don't think anything of it because it's second nature, because you get it at home. Right. This is where it starts.
A gentleman called me earlier on, Laura, and he had a question for me from Saltibus. And he wanted to know what was it about the British, that they seem to come here only when there's a white commissioner of police or etc., etc., etc. So I asked him, does he consider John Compton white? Because that's when the Queen and all of them are coming here regularly. Okay? He said, oh, I didn't know that. And I reminded him that our islands are populated primarily by black people. We're in charge of our affairs, etc., etc. You know what he said? He didn't think of that. But again, it's the insecurity again, the lack of self-belief. They don't believe in themselves. So they are not taught to believe in themselves. And also, when they do come with competition here, I say that to the beauty queens whenever they're going out to compete, the pageant people, what to expect when they go out there. The people they're going to compete against are determined to win.
Exactly.
They do whatever it takes to win. Our young ladies go out there shy because they just picked the girl out of somewhere in Denver and have a contest. It's her first time ever. She's wearing essentially a cheap outfit, whereas the other people out there have sponsors because they make money out of the girls when they win. So it's almost a no contest, and again it ends up making our contestants feel quite inferior. But the people who are promoting those things don't take those things into consideration because they don't have the experience themselves, Lord. That's another problem.
But Rick, even with that thing, I remember there was a case where this young lady was taking part in this pageant, the local leg of an international pageant. So they had to find the local person to go represent St. Lucia. And one of the contestants was outspoken, and she would rock the boat and she would ask, but why are we doing this way? Why can't we do it this way? I mean, because she wants to win at all costs. She wants to be the one out there. And she has this bold personality. And she was picked on to the point so much she just couldn't take it anymore. She dropped out of the competition. And I'm thinking, even the organizers...
Because humility.
Yes. And that's the exact word. That was the word that was used. You're not humble enough to win this thing. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, well,
the girls who win are not the girls who are the most timid. They're the ones who are the most brazen. They're the boldest ones who go out there and rock the boat.
They also have to have people. They also have to have people behind them, Laura, who know what they're about.
Exactly.
The Queen pageants overseas, it's a whole organization behind them.
Exactly.
We just pick a halfway pretty girl in this country who had no experience. We give her nothing. We don't even give her any money. She goes
but even the organizers and the supposed super chaperones, they themselves are wannabes who never made it, and so they want to make you into a clone of what they think it should be, or how they would have done it if it were them. But your time has passed. You know what I mean? But anyway, thank you. We're all out of time.
I think you're apologizing.
Not at all. I just get passionate about these things. I just judged one of those local pageants, so it's fresh in my mind. But thank you so much for calling. We're all out of time. But it's true, and it's all of those things. And I really wish somebody would hear this and really do some research on why are we the way we are.
Yeah.
And maybe we know why this generation is, but why is the previous generation that has made it's a cycle, and it needs to be broken at some point. We're all out of time. Final words from you guys.
For me, on behalf of the Department of Sustainable Development, the Ministry of Education, Gender Relations, Innovation and Sustainable Development, it was a pleasure to be here. We are interested in comments from other people. We can be reached at 451-8746.
Say that again, slower.
451-8746. That's the number for the department. But you can get us on Facebook, Sustaining St. Lucia 411. That's us on Facebook. And we are going to make this decade fabulous. There's room for innovation in fashion. There's room for innovation in sports and arts and music and science and all of those areas, and we want all St. Lucians to get on board with this.
Well, for me, all I want to say is that stay awake, participate, research and innovate. That's it. It's a decade of fun and of excitement. And we at Valerie, we are very open to any ideas that persons may have. It is not closed to any particular person. There's no all boys club or all girls club. We
Both
all
girls
in.
and boys can innovate.
We all in. So
and how can we get in touch with Valerie?
So you could check us up on our website, valerie.org.
Spell Valerie.
VALIRI .org, or you could call 457-7304 for any more information, or if you want to leave your contact details and we'll get in contact with you.
Thank you guys so much for coming through.
Awesome,
Thank you so
you.
very much. And St. Lucia, if you notice, we focused a lot on research, because we believe that from research, in order for you to innovate, you must have solid research. So tonight we talked a lot about research, and we hinted at some of the areas of innovation, and we will be coming back to you with part 2, where we focus mainly on innovation. Stay tuned for that. And as for this evening, this is it. This is where we say goodbye. See you next week.